Hello there, my flying Fencer Fitzgeralds. Welcome to my best DPS list for Fencer. I want to preface by saying that this is just the raw deeps, as they say, so this is like the best case scenario. I'm not worried about damage fall off. This is if you're the closest to the enemy on certain weapons. Just everything is best case scenario. If you're interested in actually the best weapons, in my opinion, for Fencer, then just search the class name, whether it be Ranger, Fencer, whatever, and then search Meta, M-E-T-A, and I go through all my favorite weapons, or I think the best weapons in my opinion for each class. However, this is just the best case scenario, the highest damage per second weapons. So I'm going to be covering, in this video, the highest DLC weapon in each column and the highest non-DLC weapon in each column, and I'll show those in a little video, and then after that I'll show the top contenders for each column as well, and then I'll move on to the next column, and then at the very end I'll show the highest DPS list overall. This was very challenging to do because Fencer has some challenging things you have to consider. For example, the first two columns, I had to time all the weapons animation time as well as the charge time, because the charge times are not accurate for what they say. Most of them are not accurate, and in addition to that, it doesn't tell you about how long the animation actually takes to fire the weapon. So I had to figure that in, so that's important. And then also for the Blastole Spear, the animation of how long it takes to fire the Blastole Spear, I had to figure into that list. So this is a very accurate list, at least as far as I can tell. I've done everything I could think of to make this very accurate. I also calculated the spin-up times for the weapons that have spin-up times, as well as for the missile launcher. If there's any missile launchers that have that require an aerator, what I did was I figured that you would use the best aerator laser guide kit, which does a 6x lock-on. So I figured that in for any aerator missile launchers, because like I said, I'm trying to make this is the best case scenario, the highest damage per second you can get out of these weapons for this video. Also, you can remember that you can dual wield a lot of these weapons, so a lot of these numbers you're going to see on the screen, you can multiply them by 2 if you choose to dual wield them. And last of all, this video took a very long time to make just because of all the figuring I had to do with the animations. So if you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up, because a thumbs up helps more people find it on their feed. So I would very much appreciate it if you did that. So let's go ahead and grab your javelin catapults and let's get started. Alright, let's get started with column 1 here. I'm also going to give each weapon, the top 2 practical ratings as far as if they're practical or not to use, because the damage may be high, but they may not be good weapons. So the top DLC weapon in column 1 is the DLC Force Blade. I give that a practical rating of 7 out of 10 because primarily you're just going to use that for crowds. You're not going to use that for single targets, so it's kind of limited as far as its use. It has good range though. The reason the damage is so low is because the spin-up, or the time that it takes to do the animation of the fire of the blade, takes 1.5 seconds, and the charge is 1 second. So that takes into effect the damage. The non-DLC, the top, is the Vulcan Hammer ZD. I give that a practical rating of 5 out of 10 because when you're spinning up and you get hit, you get pushed back. So you're usually going to use this hammer because it's a high damage hammer. You're going to use it on single targets such as colonists or cosmonauts. But if they're firing their machine gun at you and you're spinning around, you're not going to get your shot off until they push you away. So it's kind of hard to use. So that's why I give it a low rating. And also the Vulcan Hammer takes 2.5 seconds for the animation when you fire it, and then a 1 second charge. So that's why the damage gets lowered way down. Alright, let's talk about the top contenders now in column 1. Alright, here are the top contenders. If you want to look at the background video, I'm actually giving these frogs a little bit of a Vulcan Hammer kiss. It's kind of fun to just dash into them and hit them with the hammer. Anyway, the Vulcan D Hammer comes in pretty decently. And then after that, the DLC Quake Haken, and then the Force Axe. The thing with these weapons is you have to remember, especially the Finest Hammer, the Ultimate Hammer, it seems low damage, but you have to remember it's hitting many enemies. It's multiple enemies that it hits on the ground. And same with the Quake Haken, it hits multiple enemies, and the Axe as well. So the only weapons that don't do that are the Vulcan Hammers. So it looks a little bit, the numbers look a little bit low, but they're still decent weapons. I definitely use them. So yeah, let's move on to the next column here. Alright, on to column 2. It should be no surprise here. The DLC Twin Spear comes in very high at 21,000 damage. I give it a practical rating of 8 out of 10, mainly because of the fact of the range and because of just how difficult it can be to use. You have to kind of practice the weapon. But it can be used on most missions, and it's pretty decent even on crowds. And then also the non-DLC is also the Twin Spear, which comes in at half of that. And once again, the same thing, the practical rating of 8 out of 10. Alright, let's go on to the top contenders now. Alright, as you can see, the damage numbers are quite a bit higher than column 1, so this is going to be your higher damage for your dash weapon setup. So as you can see, the DLC jackhammer and the normal jackhammer have the same damage, it's just the DLC jackhammer has more range. Then comes the DLC blast hole spear, and then as you can see, the blast hole spears are pretty good up there. The flashing spear is higher than I expected, but once again, that weapon's harder to use just because of the range. Spine driver isn't bad, but doesn't shoot through targets. But yeah, it's actually pretty overall balanced column, I would say, as far as the damage numbers. But yeah, let's go check out the next column now. Alright, the two top contenders in this column is the DLC shotgun, which isn't too much of a surprise. This weapon is absolutely amazing. I give it a practical rating of 9 out of 10 because it's very useful in most situations, and just the damage is very good. Even if it does have damage fall off, it doesn't shoot through targets. I still highly recommend this weapon. And then for the non-DLC, the highest is the maximum disruptor. I mean, of course, you can't reload this weapon, but it has a decent amount of ammo in it. And if you have a shorter mission or something you want to kill quickly, it's not exactly a bad idea to take even 2 of these to take out a dropship fast or something like that. So, a little bit of surprise. I don't use it as much as I should, but I definitely say it's a good weapon. Alright, let's check out the top contenders now. Alright, here's a list of the top contenders. As you can see, the Hellflame Revolver is pretty high up there. I did test this weapon on a Barga, and the more flame that touches the Barga, it does not do more damage. It's always the same damage, no matter how much flame touches the Barga, unlike the Ranger's Flamethrower. So it just, the range, how far away you are from the enemy affects the damage of this flame revolver though, however. But anyway, as you can see, very good damage for the Hellflame Revolver, and now that you can dash jump around with it and use a recoil item, it's a very strong weapon. Even the level 60 Flame Revolver and the level 40 Flame Revolver, you can use those weapons even though the range is atrocious. You can still dash jump into a colonist or a cosmonaut on hard or whatever difficulty you could take that weapon on, and it'll just absolutely melt them. I actually prefer that better than the Vulcan Hammer now because it doesn't push you back when you get fired at, and you can really stun them and kill them very quickly. Also, the shotguns are pretty high damage, as you can see, but of course you have to be very close to the enemy to get that max damage because there's a pretty high fall off. But yeah, other than that, that's the top contenders. Pretty well balanced list as well. Once again, compared to Wing Diver. All right, let's move on to the next one now. Alright, on to the artillery column. The best DLC is a 38mm battle cannon. It does decent damage for a sniper. Most of the time as a fencer you don't need a sniper rifle. You usually just dash close to the dropship or the colonist and just kill them up close with the jackhammer shotgun. But if you do need a sniper, it does what it does pretty well. The dispersion mortar is the non-DLC, the highest damage, and I give it a practical rate of 9 out of 10 because I think it's a very good weapon. It's great burst damage, it's good on single targets, it's good on crowds. It's just a very good jump weapon if you need something to complement your dash jump setup. So let's check out the other contenders here. Alright, here's the top contenders. As you can see, a pretty close spread of damage numbers. 38mm battle cannon is first, then the cannon shot, which actually I don't see a lot of people use. It's a decent weapon. It shoots through targets, it's got good range. It's just a little bit hard to use, but I kind of like it. NC cannon is very good, of course, because it shoots through targets. You can use a recoil item on it. Then comes the 35mm level 70. Then the DLC mortar that shoots really fast. The thing with the mortars is you have to remember that the damage is a lot more than it appears because you're hitting multiple enemies with the splash damage. So that's something to keep in mind. Like for example, the DLC Super Heavy Crusher mortar does 356.1 damage per second. However, you have to remember there's a 60-meter blast on that thing, so chances are you're going to be hitting 25, even 50 enemies with one shot. So multiply the 21,000 damage times 50, and it adds up to be quite a bit. So just something to keep in memory for that. Of course, Wing Diver can shoot hers, in a matter of seconds, and she can shoot it more than once in a matter of seconds. But she can't fly, so it's fine. All right, let's move on to the last column here now. All right, let's talk about the missile column now. The highest DLC is the Bloodstorm. Comes in at 4580. Not too bad. I give it a practical rating of 6 out of 10. Mainly because you can't jump with it, you can't dash with the missile launcher, so you have to take your fast feet, or you have to dash hop away and then switch to it. And in addition to that, as much as I love this weapon, it's very fun. It seems like it sets off a little bit too early, so it doesn't hit its full impact on the crowd quite as well as I would like it to, but it's still a pretty fun and decent weapon. The non-DLC best DPS is the Wild Leviathan. And like I said before, this is with the 6x Air Raider's laser guide kit, so it locks on 6 times faster. I give it a practical rating of 4 out of 10. It's a fun weapon, but it's just not very practical to use in a lot of missions, unfortunately. It's definitely fun if you can get a good use on it. The problem with this is, once you, it only works on missions where the enemies don't see you, and once they see you, then it's hard to use after that, so unless you have someone distracting up front, it's kind of hard to use. Alright, let's take a look at the other contenders now. Alright, here's the top contenders for the missile launchers. As you can see, the laser-guided missiles are pretty strong up there, just unfortunately they're difficult to use and it just requires certain missions. The Arm Hound are pretty decent damage per second. They're actually better than the high altitude. But the problem with them is, of course, is the range. The high altitude aren't the greatest damage per second, but I would still say they're probably the best missiles in the game just because of the burst damage you can do to aerial targets with them, and plus the range. You can hit them from so far away. The Arcane 6-barrel are pretty high damage per second, but unfortunately they're just a little bit harder to use because you can't dash or jump with them, and you tend to hit yourself a little bit easier with them. But yeah, as you can see, pretty balanced spread on damage numbers again. Once again, like it seemed like Fencer is a pretty balanced class overall as far as the damage numbers go. Now let's take a look at the top weapons overall. Alright, here's the overall damage list. Starting from the top is the DLC Twin Spears, which is not really a surprise. Some of the things that stuck out to me, I would say, are the Disruptors are a little bit higher the damage per second than I was expecting. So I'll probably use them more often than I have in the past. I mean, they're not the greatest, of course, but I mean, I think they're still decent. If you take 2 of them, it's over 20,000 damage per second. However, to be fair, if you take the Jackhammer Shotgun combo, you're doing more damage than that. So anyway, the low-level flame revolvers also stick out to me. I think they're pretty good weapons. If you can dash hop really close to an enemy and use them up close for single targets, I think they're pretty good weapons, especially just considering their level. As you can see, as you can look at the list here, you also notice that the DLC Jackhammer, or just the Jackhammer in general, does over 7,500 damage per second, and in addition to that, the shotguns do close to 10,000, or the DLC does 15,000. So that's, as you can see, this is why Jackhammer Shotgun combo is king, because you can fire them both at the same time, which is one of the few weapons you can do that as, and therefore you can do over 22,000 damage per second with them if you have the DLC ones, or if you have the non-DLC, you're still doing, close to 20,000 damage per second with that combo. So very, very strong combo, of course. Another thing that I've noticed is the Super Heavy Crusher Mortar. Like I said, the number definitely looks deceiving. I think it's still a good weapon. I personally would probably make the reload time, like 40 seconds or something like that around there. But yeah, like I said, you have to remember that it's hitting a massive number of enemies. And if you think about how fast Fencer is, and if you could just jump around and shoot a heavy crusher mortar every 10-15 seconds, that would be extremely broken. So I understand why the reload time is so high, but I think a minute is too excessive. Overall, though, I would say his weapons are pretty well balanced. I mean, there's nothing really crazy strange on the list really that I notice. There is the Twin Spear that does 21,000 damage per second, but to be fair, it has a very short range and it's pretty hard to use. The only thing I would say is broken for Fencer, honestly, is just the Jackhammer Shotgun combo, because you can fire them both at the same time. It just makes that damage very, very high. But other than that, I would say his weapons are pretty well balanced. Like I said in the past, the only problem I really have with Fencer as far as it's his speed. I would prefer them to slow him down a bit because it makes Inferno a little bit too easy for me. But other than that, I think his weapons are in a pretty good spot going forward, in my opinion. And then, of course, like I said, I'll be finishing up the list, DPS list with Air Raider next. So I hope you'll watch that. And let me know in the comments what you think about the list. Is there anything that you would like to see them increase the damage numbers on, or adjust the numbers in any way, or just overall, were there any surprises to you? Also, like I said before, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It does make a big difference, and I appreciate it. And remember, EDF doesn't leave a man behind, ever. And if you're interested in ways to support the channel financially, please consider hitting the join button, which is next to the subscribe button, or watching a few ads, or sharing the channel with someone, as it does help financially. It's very much appreciated. Thanks a lot.